With me conveniently out of the picture, she believed she had a clear path to arbitrarily raise prices, unilaterally change long-standing payment terms, and impose impersonal, centralized systems designed to squeeze more profit from the very relationships I had spent 2 decades painstakingly building on trust and mutual respect. "There's something else you should be aware of," Marcus added, his voice barely audible now. "They've initiated a forensic audit of your expense reports, going back 3 full years. They're digging Arthur, looking for any discrepancy, any irregularity, however minor." I met his worried gaze steadily. "They won't find anything, Marcus. My reports have always been meticulous." "I know that," he acknowledged quickly. "We both know that. But they're constructing a narrative, Arthur. If, or rather when, more clients start defecting, they need a scapegoat. They need someone to blame besides their own strategic missteps." As Marcus prepared to leave, sliding out of the booth, he hesitated for a moment. "I'm updating my resume, Arthur," he admitted quietly. "Just thought you should know." Driving home through the Denver night, a strange sense of calm settled over me, displacing the earlier anger and lingering bitterness. I wasn't just learning about Isabella's ruthless ambition and flawed judgment. I was finally understanding how Oak Ridge, under Omnicorp's control, had truly perceived my contribution all along. My significant value was clearly reflected in their internal financial reports, the ones Marcus had just shown me, yet conspicuously absent from my compensation discussions and Isabella's strategic planning. They had been perfectly content to reap the substantial benefits generated by my relationships while simultaneously, quietly, planning to exploit those same relationships for greater short-term profit once I was conveniently discarded. The stark truth wasn't merely that Isabella had grossly underestimated my influence and the loyalty I commanded. It was that Oak Ridge itself, the company I had dedicated 20 years to building, had fundamentally undervalued me for years. 2 months into my new role at Summit Building Solutions, I had settled into a productive rhythm. My spacious corner office offered panoramic views of downtown Denver, a constant reminder of this new chapter. My small but rapidly growing team now included 2 sharp, energetic young sales representatives whom I had personally recruited and was actively mentoring. I had made absolutely no direct effort to solicit any of my former Oak Ridge clients. There was simply no need. Driven by dissatisfaction and a desire for stability, they came to me. The first major shift occurred with Robert Klein from Horizon Builders. He called me the day after Oak Ridge formally implemented Isabella's across-the-board price increases. "Arthur, can you believe this?" he fumed over the phone, his voice tight with indignation. "A 14% hike, completely out of the blue, zero warning or discussion. Can Summit match our original Oak Ridge pricing?" We could, and we did. Furthermore, we bundled in several value-added logistical and support services that Oak Ridge, under its new efficiency-focused regime, had never offered. Then came Westerly Developers, a significant regional player followed closely by Regional Builders Group, and then Austin Modern Construction. The pattern was consistent with each call: frustration over unexpected price jumps, resentment towards rigid new corporate policies dictated by Omnicorp, and complaints about increasingly impersonal, unresponsive service from Oak Ridge's centralized account management team. By the conclusion of my second month at Summit, 4 of my former top 10 Oak Ridge accounts had formally transitioned their substantial business entirely to Summit Building Solutions. I personally oversaw each transition, ensuring flawless execution. My nascent team willingly worked weekends to guarantee perfect initial orders, double-checking every detail. I made it a point to personally visit several job sites to confirm timely deliveries and address any minor logistical hiccups immediately. Word began to circulate rapidly through the tight-knit Denver construction industry. Following Arthur Vance to Summit meant not only competitive pricing, but demonstrably better, more personalized service and reliable problem-solving. Then my direct line rang. The caller ID displayed Isabella Rossi's name. "Arthur, we need to talk," she said, her voice strained, the usual crisp confidence replaced by a distinct note of thinly veiled panic. I agreed, somewhat reluctantly, to meet her at a neutral coffee shop near Summit's downtown office tower later that afternoon. Isabella arrived a full 15 minutes early, already seated at a small table, nervously stirring a half-empty latte when I walked in. She looked tired, the impeccable polish slightly dulled. "This has to stop, Arthur," she stated immediately, dispensing with any pretense of pleasantries. "Stop? What exactly needs to stop, Isabella?" I asked calmly, taking the seat opposite her. "You know perfectly well what I'm talking about," she retorted, her voice rising slightly before she caught herself, glancing around the coffee shop. "This systematic poaching of our key clients." I slowly stirred my own black coffee, letting the accusation hang in the air. "Isabella, I haven't actively solicited a single Oak Ridge client since my departure." She flushed slightly, a flicker of anger crossing her features before she visibly composed herself. "4 major accounts," she stated flatly, her knuckles white as she gripped her coffee cup. "4 of our largest clients have terminated their contracts with Oak Ridge in the past 8 weeks alone. And according to Chloe and the transition team, all of them specifically mentioned your move to Summit as a primary factor." "Clients ultimately make their own business decisions, Isabella," I replied evenly, "based on factors they deem important." Isabella leaned forward intently, lowering her voice. "We can make this process easy, or we can make it hard, Arthur." Her attempt at intimidation felt hollow now. "Easy means you immediately cease all contact with Oak Ridge clients, and Omnicorp chooses not to pursue aggressive legal action against you and Summit for breach of contract and tortious interference." "There is no breach, Isabella," I stated calmly, meeting her gaze directly. "As your own legal team drafted, my non-compete agreement specifically prevents me from selling competing custom architectural millwork for a period of 6 months. Summit's current offerings in the broader construction supply division do not directly compete with Oak Ridge's specialized millwork focus." Her eyes narrowed, searching my face. "You're deliberately exploiting a loophole, a technicality. I am respecting the precise terms and limitations of a legally binding agreement that Oak Ridge's, or rather Omnicorp's, lawyers drafted and required me to sign." I counted smoothly. I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Perhaps they should have exercised greater diligence and foresight in defining the scope of the restrictions." "The board," she admitted, her voice dropping, losing its edge, revealing a crack in her facade. "Omnicorp's board is asking difficult questions. About the sudden decline in client retention rates, about the significant downward revisions to revenue projections for the Denver division." I offered a noncommittal shrug. "That sounds like an internal Oak Ridge matter, Isabella." She shifted tactics, attempting a different approach, one perhaps rooted in negotiation rather than threats. "What is it you actually want, Arthur?" she asked, her tone softening slightly, becoming almost conciliatory. "Is there some kind of consulting arrangement we could discuss? A finder's fee, perhaps, for encouraging certain key accounts to remain with Oak Ridge?" I nearly laughed aloud at the absurdity, the sheer transactional nature of her thinking. She still fundamentally didn't understand the core issue. "This wasn't about money or leverage for me. I'm not interested in any special arrangements, Isabella," I said, pushing my chair back and standing up, signaling the end of the conversation. "I'm simply interested in doing my job here at Summit, doing it well, and building something sustainable. The rest," I added, looking down at her, "tends to take care of itself." The very next day, my phone rang. It was Nathan Shaw from Keystone Development Partners. Their existing 3-year contract with Oak Ridge was nearing its expiration date and coming up for formal renewal. "Arthur, we're officially putting the entire contract out to bid," he informed me, his tone professional but decisive. "Isabella Rossi has been calling me almost daily for the past week. Yesterday, she formally offered in writing to beat any competitor's final bid price by a guaranteed 5%. "That certainly sounds like a compelling offer, Nathan," I acknowledged neutrally. "Does it?" He counted immediately. Because frankly, Arthur, I'm looking at far more than just the bottom line price this time around. I need a supply partner who truly understands the complexities of Keystone's business, someone I can rely on, someone who actually answers their phone at 7 p.m. on a Friday when a critical project shipment is delayed and we're facing potential penalties. 2 weeks later, following a rigorous bidding and evaluation process, Keystone Development Partners awarded Summit Building Solutions a comprehensive 2-year supply contract. The deal was valued at approximately $4.2 million annually. It was a monumental win for Summit, the kind of strategic victory that generates buzz and gets prominently featured in industry trade publications. On the very same day the Keystone contract was finalized, I received a brief, personal email from Marcus Bell. It contained only a forwarded internal Oak Ridge announcement memo. The memo stated, in carefully worded corporate jargon, that Isabella Rossi was being reassigned to lead strategic development initiatives within the broader Omnicorp structure, effective immediately. Oak Ridge, the memo continued, would be conducting a formal executive search for a new vice president of sales strategy for the Denver division. I didn't reply to Marcus's email, nor did I reach out to anyone else at Oak Ridge. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I simply forwarded the signed Keystone contract PDF to Leo Martel with a concise note attached. First of many significant wins, Leo. Confident we can reach $20 million in new business by year-end. The wheels I had inadvertently set in motion were now turning with undeniable momentum. And Isabella Rossi was only just beginning to comprehend the true, staggering cost of her initial miscalculation regarding my worth and the loyalty I commanded. 6 months after joining Summit Building Solutions, I stood in the company's expansive main conference room, surrounded by my motivated and growing team. Projected onto the large wall-mounted screen were our impressive quarterly performance results, $13.7 million in newly secured business, tracking well ahead of schedule, with updated projections indicating we were on pace to potentially hit $22 million by the end of the fiscal year. Remarkably, 8 of my 10 former top-tier client accounts from Oak Ridge had now fully transitioned their business relationship over to Summit. Leo Martel walked into the room beaming, carrying a celebratory bottle of champagne and several glasses. "Great news, team," he announced, his voice filled with genuine excitement. The board just concluded their meeting and unanimously approved Arthur's full division expansion plan. That means additional headcount, a significantly increased marketing budget, dedicated support staff, everything Arthur asked for to accelerate our growth. As glasses were being filled and congratulations exchanged, my personal phone buzzed discreetly in my pocket. It was a text message from Marcus. Oak Ridge Q3 earnings call starting in 30 minutes. Stream link attached. Might be illuminating. Excusing myself quietly from the small celebration, I stepped into my office and dialed into the investor conference call using the provided link. Oak Ridge's new CEO, David Chen, sounded audibly tense, his voice strained as he began addressing the analysts and investors. While we anticipated some transitional disruption following the implementation of our strategic restructuring initiatives earlier this year, he began reading carefully from a prepared statement. Our third-quarter sales performance has unfortunately underperformed against initial projections. Specifically, we have experienced unexpected and frankly disappointing client attrition primarily within our commercial interiors division based in Denver. An analyst from a major investment firm interrupted sharply. "Mr. Chen, can you please quantify the extent of that attrition? We're seeing independent market estimates suggesting Oak Ridge may have lost nearly 20% of its total annual revenue originating from the Denver market in just the past 2 quarters. Those numbers circulating are purely speculative and likely inflated." Mr. Chen deflected quickly, though his voice lacked conviction. "We are proactively implementing an aggressive client retention strategy and are confident in stabilizing the situation." "Mr. Chen," another analyst pressed, her voice pointed, "is it accurate that your historically largest account, Keystone Development Partners, recently finalized a multi-year exclusive agreement with competitor Summit Building Solutions. The silence that followed was heavy, deafening, stretching uncomfortably long over the audio feed. We are in ongoing discussions and negotiations with all of our key strategic accounts. Mr. Chen finally responded, his voice sounding tight and evasive. As the difficult call continued with more probing questions about market share loss and margin pressures, a new email notification popped up on my screen. It was from Chloe Jenkins, my former hire at Oak Ridge, the one who had seemingly aligned herself with Isabella. The subject line was stark and revealing. Inquiry. Any potential openings at Summit? I closed the earnings call feed and rejoined the low-key celebration in the conference room, politely declining the offered glass of champagne. Leo noticed my contemplative expression. "Everything all right, Arthur?" he asked quietly. "Yes, Leo," I replied with a faint smile. "Just received some external confirmation that we're definitely on the right track." Later that afternoon, a prominent industry newsletter published an article that quickly made the rounds. Oak Ridge Custom Interiors struggles following exodus of key accounts and senior leadership. The piece specifically detailed my departure from Oak Ridge and subsequent move to Summit, directly linking it to the significant migration of several major clients. It even included an unattributed quote from an anonymous current Oak Ridge employee stating that the new Omnicorp management had fundamentally misunderstood and tragically undervalued the deep relationships established by its former senior sales leadership. I never had to utter a single negative word about Oak Ridge or Isabella. I didn't need to engage in gossip or retribution. The numbers, the market movement, the results, they spoke eloquently and devastatingly for themselves. A year to the day after Isabella Rossi had coolly informed me that my compensation package was outdated, I sat in my significantly larger office at Summit Building Solutions, reviewing our finalized annual performance reports. The division I had built from scratch had generated an impressive $26.3 million in revenue, exceeding even my own ambitious projections set just months earlier. My team had expanded significantly, growing from the initial 2 sales representatives to a dynamic group of 11 professionals, supported by a dedicated client service and logistics staff. We had recently relocated to occupy an entire, newly renovated floor within the Summit office tower, and Leo Martle had begun subtly hinting about a potential board position opening up in the near future. On my desk, beside the usual business clutter, sat a framed photograph taken at our division's recent holiday dinner. It captured the faces of my team, relaxed, engaged, displaying genuine smiles. It was a snapshot of a group that understood, implicitly, the principle I had always held paramount. Real, sustainable business is built not on spreadsheets and algorithms, but on unwavering trust and mutual respect. My assistant's voice came through the intercom, slightly hesitant. "Mr. Vance, there's a Ms. Isabella Rossi here in the lobby to see you. She doesn't have an appointment." I paused for a moment, considering. Then, I nodded slowly to myself. "It's all right, Sarah. Send her in." Isabella looked markedly different as she stepped into my office. The sharp edges seemed softened, the imposing confidence replaced by a visible weariness. Her expensive designer suit was gone, replaced by something unremarkable, slightly ill-fitting, likely purchased off the rack. "Arthur," she began, her voice lacking its former authority. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice." She remained standing uncertainly, even after I gestured towards one of the comfortable visitor chairs opposite my desk. "What can I do for you, Isabella?" I asked, keeping my tone polite but neutral. I'm with Hamilton Group now," she explained, avoiding direct eye contact for a moment. "A smaller business consulting firm. I was hoping perhaps I could get your perspective, off the record of course, on Summit's highly successful approach to client retention, for a case study I'm developing." The irony was almost palpable. I allowed myself a small, internal smile. "Isabella," I replied gently, "I believe you already witnessed my approach firsthand back at Oak Ridge." She nodded stiffly, a faint flush rising on her cheeks. Yes, I. I clearly made a significant miscalculation during my time there. It was the closest she would likely ever come to an apology. You did, I agreed simply without malice. The market, she continued, seeming to gather herself slightly. People are talking about how you effectively dismantled a major competitor's market share without uttering a single negative word publicly. That's, that's a powerful reputation to cultivate, Arthur. I offered no response, letting the silence settle between us. Isabella hadn't come seeking insights for a case study. She had come seeking something else entirely, perhaps absolution, maybe reconciliation, or even just a professional lifeline. I wasn't prepared to offer any of them. After a prolonged, awkward moment, she carefully placed a generic-looking business card on the edge of my desk. Well, she murmured, if you ever find yourself wanting to discuss broader industry trends or anything, I appreciate the offer, Isabella, I said, rising from my chair, subtly indicating the meeting was over. But my team and I are fully booked these days, focused on serving our clients here at Summit. After she had departed, her shoulders slumped slightly as she walked down the hallway. I glanced briefly at the flimsy business card she'd left behind. Then, without a second thought, I dropped it directly into the shredder beside my desk. That evening, I drove across town to my daughter's new condo for dinner. She had recently been promoted to senior architect at her firm, and her excitement was infectious. So, how's work really going, Dad? She asked as we sat out on her small balcony, enjoying the cool Denver evening air. Work is good, I replied simply, feeling a deep sense of contentment. Really good. We're building something important, something that'll last. And I truly believed we were. Not constructing with wood and joinery this time, but building a business, a team, a reputation founded on the same enduring principles that had guided my entire professional life. Do the work diligently, always keep your promises, and value the human relationships above the mere transaction. In the end, Isabella Rossi, in her ruthless ambition and profound misjudgment, had inadvertently given me an unexpected, invaluable gift. She had forced me, under intense scrutiny, to prove not only to myself, but to the entire industry watching, exactly what 20 years of carefully nurtured trust was truly, tangibly worth.